Hi, everyone, and welcome to 10-Minute Elections. We are a week out from when the race has been called, as this is I know it was delayed a few days, but this is part two of 2020 presidential election recap, as we are just going to go from Minnesota to Maine in terms of the 2020 presidential election results as opposed to my projections. Part one I released earlier this week and is up on YouTube. I will link that up top and in the description. So let's just hop right into it. Joe Biden won the election. They're really, despite claims to the contrary from some people within the White House, there was really not evidence of any widespread voter fraud at all. If anything, maybe a few hundred votes one way or another, which is very common, just because with such a sheer high volume of ballots. There's bound to be a couple of counting errors, but certainly nothing that will swing the election. So Joe Biden won by the same margin Trump did in 2016. We'll just go from Minnesota. The state of Minnesota's 10 electoral votes. I had projected going by roughly 7 points to the vice president, a 5.5 point improvement from Hillary Clinton's 1.5, surprisingly small, almost a tilt margin of victory in 2016. This is indeed what happened. Biden won roughly 52% of the vote in Minnesota to Trump's 45. And in Iowa, which I had marked as a tilt Republican, it actually went likely, and Republican Ashley Hinson flipped a House seat that incumbent Democrat Abby Finkenauer was expected to win in Iowa. Missouri and Kansas, for that matter, both just barely went by safe margins, just cracked that 15% threshold. Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. I had Louisiana and Mississippi going by likelies, and that didn't happen. Although, point of interest, the Mississippi Senate race was actually a good bit closer than the Alabama Senate race, which went by a hefty safe margin against the incumbent Democrat Doug Jones. So Tommy Tuberville will be Alabama's next senator. Tennessee and Kentucky. Illinois went likely Democratic, and Indiana went safe Republican. Ohio, I had rated as a tilt Republican. It looked intriguing early in the night, and it looked like Biden had an excellent lead with more mail-in ballots to count. But as the results from a lot of the more conservative Ohio suburbs that aren't quite on par with the suburbs from the rest of the country, it just became clear that Trump would win the state, and eventually he was able to pull ahead, and he ended up winning it by a more than expected 8 points, which is only about a point behind of what he ran in 2016. So that suburban revolt was just expected to occur for Joe Biden, but suburban voters only went for the vice president by single digits. State of Wisconsin, I had rated as a lean going into election day. A lot of folks had it rated as a likely, and it ended up going as a tilt, although a decently decisive one. Just what the state was called by most major news outlets when we knew that Joe Biden took the lead, and the outstanding ballots were from Wayne County. So that was really Joe Biden was always expected to pull away once that was the case, and so he was able to carry what was supposed to be one of the toughest battlegrounds of 2020, and indeed shaped up to be. Michigan actually went by a lean margin. I expected it to go by nearly what Minnesota would go by. It went by roughly 3 points, and the Senate race was actually much closer. I'm sorry. Gary Peters ran behind Joe Biden, but since this was Michigan, Michigan is, as at least for now, generically blue state. John James wasn't quite able to pull it out. We'll go through the Northeast and then finish in the South because there's so much to talk about in North Carolina and Florida. I could go on for days. The second congressional district of Maine I had going by tilt Democrat, but it was always really a wild card, and it went by roughly 6 or 7 points to the Republicans. The rest of Maine went as expected, although Sarah Gideon ran way behind Joe Biden, and Susan Collins actually won her reelection by a likely margin, so that's very, very interesting. All of the rest of the Northeast went as expected. Pennsylvania only went by a tilt margin, although as those last few ballots trickle in, that may increase to a lean. We'll just have to see. As for now, it's a very high tilt, looking at about a 0.8 to 0.9% margin of victory for Joe Biden. We saw a lot of the white suburban voters and the white working class voters not necessarily swing to Joe Biden maybe as much as expected, but certainly in counties that Hillary Clinton narrowly carried, like Bucks County. Hillary Clinton carried that county, but only by about 2 points. Joe Biden was able to expand on that margin by multiple points, and that was basically the case across a lot of Pennsylvania. That he was just doing a little bit better with those white suburban voters, a little bit better with the white working class, and turned out to vote a little bit more popularity in the urban areas of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And so altogether, that was enough to swing the state about a full point into the vice president, into the president elect's column. I know I've been saying vice president, but I would start saying president elect because he'll be president in January. Virginia did go as likely as expected. North Carolina, let's hit this one. So the white suburban vote I talked about in Pennsylvania, it didn't go as much for Biden as expected, like in the state of North Carolina. And part of it is that black and brown voters went for Trump by 4 more points than they did in 2016. They didn't go for Trump in either one, but Trump definitely made up a lot of ground that maybe wasn't being projected as much. So Joe Biden won independent and moderate voters, but only by 4 points. Joe Biden only took 50% of that vote to Trump's 46. He needed more of that because North Carolina is a generically conservative state. He got out the vote okay in the urban areas, but he just wasn't able to make enough ground because North Carolina is so heavily rural and suburban. Just winning in the research, just winning in the research triangle really isn't going to do you enough good when Donald Trump is racking up massive and oftentimes bigger than expected margins in a lot of the western part of the state. So Biden carried that moderate tier by less than expected. Less conservatives went for Biden than were expected. The margins of liberals going for Trump and conservatives going for Biden in North Carolina were actually roughly equal. So he just didn't turn out enough of. Well, he actually did turn out an adequate amount of the vote, but he didn't turn out enough Biden vote or sway enough of those suburban voters, and those suburban voters were really the backbone of both Democrats' 2018 House gains, like in South Carolina's first district, which Joe Cunningham won in 2018 as a Democrat. That flipped back into the Republican column in 2020. Separate video about the House coming soon. And so those voters are really what allowed Donald Trump to rack up but roughly a 1.5 point margin in the state, and Tom Tillis ran about even with that, if not. Tom Tillis actually ran slightly ahead of Donald Trump, which I understand because Joe Biden was a fairly popular candidate, a little bit more popular than Cal Cunningham, certainly more popular than Cal Cunningham in these last few months with the Cal Cunningham's extramarital affair unearthed, and also Donald Trump just isn't quite as popular as Tom Tillis, although neither are particularly popular in the state. South Carolina went as about as expected, and Jamie Harrison really did not run too far ahead of Joe Biden. The state of Georgia. Joe Biden did an excellent job of turning out voters here, as well as Stacey Abrams and John Lewis. I know Stacey Abrams' organization, Fair Fight, registered something like 800,000 voters of color in the last 2 years, and that really paid dividends as Joe Biden was able to win the state by roughly 0.3 points, although obviously there's still some recounts pending in there just because it is so close. In Fulton County, that's where Atlanta is, Biden won by about 50%, 75 to 25. DeKalb County, he won 83% of the vote. And even the counties around that, Gwinnett County, he won nearly 60%. Newton County, he won about 55%. These are all tens of thousands of votes going into the Biden column. Henry County, which is another suburb around Atlanta. So Biden was winning suburbs, although these are a little bit more diverse suburbs than we talk about in North Carolina. Henry County, he did win that by 20 points, roughly 60 to 40. Down in Savannah as well, he won Chatham County, which is where Savannah is, by about a 20-point margin. And he won Muskogee. He won Muskogee County. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but he won the county that Columbus is around handily. So, yeah, that is the last time Georgia went blue was 1992. So this is a big Yes, the last time Georgia went blue was in 1992. Time before that, Jimmy Carter was the president. Now Georgia has gone blue once again. Although I really don't know what to say about this state in the future. and it's good. I do not think that the Democratic candidates will win in the Senate runoff. I'm going to reclassify those as tilt and lean Republicans. I'll talk about why, but obviously control of the Senate hinges on that. For now, though, Joe Biden did run an excellent campaign in Georgia, and it looks like he will pull out the victory there. Okay, let's move down to Florida. A last state and probably the most interesting state. Here's the thing with Florida. Across most of the state, Joe Biden did exactly what he needed to do. He ran up decent margins in places like Duval County, which did not go to the Democrats in 2016. Up in Tallahassee, he won through the I 4 corridor. He won Orange County handily, racking up almost 400,000 votes in Orange County. So this was huge for Joe Biden. He won Pinellas County, which is really what cost Hillary Clinton the state. She lost it by a few points. Joe Biden actually won it, and he won the neighboring Hillsborough County by a likely margin as well. So everything looked rosy for Joe Biden in Florida. He was doing fantastic, making up a good 3% from where Hillary Clinton was. So he was on track to win it by more than expected, and even cutting into Trump's margins in these redder districts. But then we get down to Miami-Dade. This is where the problems came up. Hillary Clinton won over 60% of the vote in Miami-Dade. It's the biggest county in Florida. A lot of Cuban American voters here, and Joe Biden Hillary Clinton just ran up this vote. The reason she didn't win is because she basically didn't do all that well anywhere else. But she held her weight in Miami-Dade County. Joe Biden did not. He won 53% of the vote here to Trump's 46, but that's just not nearly enough of a margin. So he lost Florida by roughly he lost Florida by a pretty big leading margin, roughly 3 percentage points, because he did so terribly in Miami-Dade County, and he did fine in Broward County and okay in Palm Beach County, but Miami-Dade County, the really interesting statistic here, and this really single group that swung Florida into the president's column: Cuban Americans. This was the single biggest demographic shift from 2016. In 2016, Cuban Americans went for Hillary Clinton at a 55% clip. This time, with Donald Trump having a lot, obviously changing his residents to Florida, but also a lot of messaging about Joe Biden as a socialist. Joe Biden wants to defund the police, which is untrue. That's not in line with his policies, but it was seemingly very effective messaging by the Trump campaign, because in 2020, Donald Trump won 59% of the Cuban American vote. That is a 14-point swing in the president's column, which is a massive demographic turn. Granted, in other areas, such as in Nevada, in Arizona, and in Georgia, Joe Biden did just fine with voters of color. The Cuban American vote, which is the biggest minority share of Miami-Dade County. It's really what makes or breaks that county. Went very handily for Donald Trump. And even Joe Biden's gains across the state, especially in Pinellas County, which was considered the breaking point for Hillary Clinton. And it it was widely speculated that if Joe Biden won Pinellas County, he would win the election. He did win Pinellas County by a tilt margin, but he did so unexpectedly badly with Cuban American voters that didn't matter. I had said a couple weeks out from the election, I'm projecting Florida to be a lean Biden, but it could be a real thorn in his side if he can't shore up support with Latino voters. I was saying, if Donald Trump can effectively cut into that Latino support, then this state could very well go to the president. That's exactly what happened, even though Joe Biden did even a little bit better than I expected across a lot of the state. So, regardless of Donald Trump's surprise victory in Florida, Joe Biden did win a solid 306 electoral votes, flipping the states from 2016 of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. The president did not flip any states, so President elect Biden will take office this January. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed these videos. The comment section is a great place to dissect your your electoral takes, because that's what this channel is for. Feel free to share this channel with a friend if you think they would enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing y'all pretty soon. I think the next video I do will be a Senate overview plus an analysis of where the presidential and senatorial races were relative to my maps, just how much they swung in each column. And then I will have a House election recap, plus a Georgia, another Georgia State of the Day, basically Georgia runoff elections overview. Um, at that point, once we're done with all of that stuff, I'll probably have videos covering the 2020 election going. Probably there's so much to dissect from this election. Just all the mail-in votes, all the voters of color, white suburban voters, conservative versus liberal splits, and where the independent and moderate vote was going. There's so much to dissect. I'll probably be making videos like this until mid 2021. At that point, we may go into a few future of the state videos, like a state of the day for states like Michigan, Florida, and Georgia and Arizona. And then finally, really by late 2021 slash early 2022, I will be in full swing discussing the 2022 midterm elections. You'd be surprised how much content I can draw off of for stuff that really only happens every 2 years, and the big elections only every four. There's pretty much stuff to take the calendar up. All right. Thank y'all so much for watching again. Please like, comment, subscribe, and tell a friend, and I will see y'all in the next one. I'm probably the Senate video, if not, maybe the Georgia video.